the events of Friday night in Paris with the terrorist attack really changed the whole, uh, not only scope of the debate because they wanted to focus more on international
Hmm.
in the Middle East, but also just the simple tone of it. That people realized, here we had Obama saying on a Friday morning talk show that
Hmm.
ISIS was contained and all of this stuff, and it really shows either A, his people have him so out of touch that he doesn't know what's going on. B, he just figures I'll just lie to everybody because, I want them to feel safe or something. Or, or C, he's absolutely clueless about what's really going on. But so it put the three potential candidates, the three candidates, in awkward positions. But Hillary was clearly in the crosshairs because when Bernie brought up the fact that she essentially orchestrated the ouster of Gaddafi, and she tried to dodge that bullet, but I felt she was totally on the defensive about everything that was going on, and the fact that as Donald Trump said, she was probably one of the worst Secretary of States in history. So I think I the big takeaway was Bernie, for me, made him seem like I'm the people's sort of president, where she's Wall Street's president. I mean, that was even Martin O'Malley made that reference
Hmm.
to Hillary, that she's really, and her ludicrous statement about 9/11 relating somehow to this is absurd. And she tried to cover that later, but it was yeah, it was in general I was underwhelmed, but clearly the attacks in Paris had changed the whole tenor of the conversation. Now, what is your take?
Well, I mean, once again, I don't know how much this is really going to change anything, the debate overall, because the usual thing is happening. All the pundits are calling Hillary the winner, and all the polls conducted by her super PAC are calling her the winner. And not a lot of people watched it, the
Yeah,
debate. And
which is partly to your point about she can't mobilize the electorate.
well, I mean, the Democratic National Committee, of course, scheduled it on a big Iowa football night. So I mean, they're smart to like keep her exposure to an absolute minimum. But I didn't feel she gave any clear answers on anything,
Was it?
and was just basically dodging questions and doing a lot of double speak
Yeah.
throughout the whole thing.
I
And
do want to point out, though, that the Washington Post was critical of her and didn't say she really won, uh, which was surprising to me because, as we know, the Washington Post is a total supporter of. I think these media outlets think they have to be coaches for the candidates, and so I suppose they talk to the underlings, and if the underlings don't get it, they just come out and put it in the paper or online. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it didn't really change anybody's opinion one way or the other. The people who thought that Hillary was a Wall Street shill still think that. That was reinforced, and there were no real solutions. They were just political statements. There were no one saying, "This is my plan. This is why it'll work." That opportunity was missed by everybody.
well, there's a lot of this is my plan,
Yeah.
and go to my website and look at my plan. Like Hillary said, her exclamation for Glass Steagall is mine's tougher. I get rid of
No.
shadow banking. It's tougher. I mean, she really sounded like what she is, which is the establishment Republican candidate.
Yeah, she did.
Her foreign policy all sounded very Republican. I mean, with the exception of Affordable Care Act, and really maybe a slight ace in the hole down the road for Hillary could be maybe is Supreme Court appointees, because if you have a Republican president, because there's people coming off the Supreme Court in the next cycle here, and it could be pretty bad. But can Hillary get enough? See, there's just nothing exciting about her. That's the thing, and even when she was like almost breaking up into tears about talking to the families of whatever she was talking about, it seemed rehearsed to me.
It was all rehearsed.
It seemed like, all right, no, you gotta hold, like the whole thing. It felt coached. Like, okay, I'm gonna rehearse this narrative here, which a lot of these debates is a lot of coachedness. Where they're like waiting to get that line in. Like even O'Malley's big moment of his carnival barker. He was waiting for that, and I mean, and Sanders, if you've seen his speeches and been to his rallies, as I have, he just kind of says the same thing over and over again. Yeah. He's just basically regurgitating his stump speech, which is fine because he does mean it, and it is actually coming from somewhere. And I don't think there was a team of people writing that, and he was waiting for his moment to say that line. Mm-hmm. But it's still a stump speech, nonetheless. Yeah. And so it's one of the things, like, what do you really get out of these debates except they just feel like, what propels the candidates are things that have no substance whatsoever.
Yeah, it's... I think we need to change the format of these debates. And I will say this, I thought that CBS asked, they were a little tougher on Hillary than I thought they would be. Because they did call her out on a number of things that she's either flip-flopped on or that you can't reconcile her position. So, but fundamentally, it doesn't, I'm so tired of hearing go to my website and read the thing. So, when people just spat off numbers about how many, grow the economy at this rate, Clearly, one thing, when they asked Hillary, would you break up the big banks? She didn't answer the question. She just said, oh, my plan is tougher, and so forth. But to the moderator's credit, he came back and said, look, I just asked you a question, yes or no. Would you break them up? And she wouldn't answer it.
No, but she didn't. She answered it by not answering it.
Yeah.
Because at least Sanders would just come out and say no, if he was asked a question. And poor Martin O'Malley if he just had more charisma. I mean, he's sort of almost he's Romney-esque in his presidential looks.
Yeah. And
he really actually seems sincere about what he's talking about. And I agree with a lot of his stances, but he just lacks that charisma. And maybe it's because he's just not mean and cunning enough to be president. Because you got to be mean and cunning on some level. And Hillary's got that in spades. She's mean and cunning in spades, and I think that's what attracts some people to her. Like, yeah, she would be a tough commander-in-chief. Mm-hmm. But, her cunningness is all self-serving, I believe. And so, and I think Sanders knows he's in a cunning world, but he's himself is not as cunning as the people he deals with. Whereas you have somebody like Trump who's just pure cunning.
Yeah.
Well,
everything is a negotiation with Trump from minute one. So, and he's playing the Trump part, the Donald. He's become actually a caricature of himself, and that's part of the problem. Is while he's an outsider, and we know he isn't taking super PAC money. He's not likable at all, and he's not a real leader. He's not someone who you go. For example, leaders have everybody else eat first and then they eat. That's what leaders do. He doesn't work that way. So, his idea of being a leader is I'm going to put down everybody. I mean, the attack he made on Ben Carson was insane from a political standpoint. why the hell would you make an attack on calling him a pathological liar? And what's he going to do when he gets in the that was
Well, one thing that Trump says is he speaks of things that a lot of people secretly think, but are too afraid to say in this politically correct world. Because there's some things you just really can't come out and say without having a big apology. But Trump, he doesn't struggle with that. And there's a lot of people going, USA, yeah, or going, yeah, Carson is a pathological, think that. But nobody's calling him out on it. And so um, I think, people respond to that. And in the Democratic debate, you really get, Hillary doesn't give any straight answers of anything. O'Malley lacks charisma. If he had more charisma, and if Bernie, I sadly to say, if he was like 30 years younger and looked like Robert Redford, it would be a landslide right now.
well. I think my problem with Bernie's message, though, is first of all, I agree with a lot of what he says. There's no question. When he was talking about community banks, and I mean, how close to Plan 182 is that?
Yeah.
Bringing everything back local, as opposed to whatever he said, that 66% of the assets are
Right.
it's 5 banks. Um, and that's why you're absolutely right about Hillary being the perfect Republican candidate when she wouldn't answer the question whether she would break up these banks.
No, and
That answered the
yeah.
question, as you say.
Yeah, well, that was an answer into itself, and she didn't really answer any questions.
No. So it told you two things. One, she's a total calculating politician. You'll never really know where she stands on anything. And where she probably stands is the status quo is great. Look at me. I'm doing great. And I'll pander to the people and say, we'll make things better for you and so forth. But will she? No, I don't think so. But I think what I would really, and Bernie can't recraft his message now. But if he, and you're right. I mean, O'Malley has no charisma whatsoever. He's there's no there. Okay, I know he probably has some compassion, but I really think, as I said before, the Democrats don't want change. Bernie is the only one who wants change. The other people really want to keep things kind of the same, and even if it includes a totally failed foreign policy in the Middle East, that's now, and you saw the response when those attacks took place in Paris. I was at a party, and I said, "You watch, the military will make a bunch of airstrikes tomorrow." And the people were like, "Oh no, I don't know." They didn't have any military background, but they're like, "Oh no, they won't react like that." Really? France had 30 airstrikes the following day, and oh, by the way, we blew up the Libyan head of ISIS with a drone. So, yeah, the gloves are going to come off, and unfortunately for France, nobody takes the gloves off like France because they have their famous action service over there, which is like
Yeah. France has a pretty brutal history. They can get brutal with if
the pendulum swings way to the other side,
right?
And it's over there now. So, but yeah, I thought. So we were confirmed what people thought about Hillary, which is she's a professional politician. She won't really answer any question directly if it's anything other than part of her campaign, part of her platform. Bernie, if Bernie repositioned his message to be, everybody should have that same opportunity that the Wall Street banks give the wealthy people. Mm-hmm. I mean, when O'Malley said we have to bring them back so that these companies can invest back in the U.S., that was totally naive because the Fortune 500 or 100 is not going to reinvest in the United States, period. Not happening. Okay, what are they going to do? Dividend out to shareholders and do stock buybacks because everything is about this quarterly report. There's no vision for country. That they don't care about the country. I mean, Carl Icahn was on. It's not my job to care about the country. Well, okay. If you're getting benefits from the country and from the Federal Reserve, because you can do takeovers of companies, we have a massive M&A thing going on because there's no such thing as a monopoly in the U.S. None. Okay, even though we have dozens of them. There's no such thing as too big, because we'll always help you out. If it's not too big to fail, it's like you're not too big to not need help. Every big company needs help. And so this is the fallacy of it. And I think we just need that new vision of it's not taking the money away by taxing these people more so they just leave. That that's the fallacy of Bernie's solution. On the other hand, it's not Donald Trump's solution where individuals and small business owners pay 10% more than the wealthiest companies. That's ridiculous. So, yeah, it was, and it was carefully played to have, on Saturday night when you have on 3 major networks college football games going on. So I didn't see I saw the numbers, but I didn't see the breakdown of how many women watched versus how many men. But I can guarantee you, there weren't many men watching.
And it was a big Iowa football game. Well, basically,
you not only had that, you had Stanford and so, and then you had LSU. I mean, Arkansas. There were a bunch of big games on. So yeah, it's totally calculated.
Yeah, the DNC basically wants to have the least amount of Hillary exposures possible, and the debate really shows why. Because you could make the other argument of, well, you want people to see your candidate and get excited and see her message and her breadth of the issues, but they're smart in not exposing her, because the more she's exposed, because her breadth of the issues is no straight answers and a bunch of double and triple speak. And I'm sure Bill is helping her pen and craft all those things that she memorizes as responses, because if it's off point and doesn't see it coming, she's not fast on her feet at all. And that's when she gets that mean look on her face. Like, what? You're doing this to me? Wait a minute.
Why are you asking me that kind of question?
Right. And it flops up. Yeah.
I'm Hillary. Yeah, Hillary doesn't get asked, but again, talking about herself in the third person. She's. There was nothing inspiring. But, you can't say, I'm so ready for Hillary. You can't do it.
No, but the truth is there was no knockout punch. And probably, since it's going to be uninformed, well, this is what the mainstream media has been telling me, voters. Because really, probably the only people that were watching that debate were people interested in things and have sort of made up their mind already.
I think
there probably wasn't enough to make anybody go, hey, I'm gonna switch teams here. Maybe a little bit, maybe, but the people that don't like Hillary still aren't gonna like her, and the people that just kind of buy into it will kind of be confused by the double and triple speak and vague answering. And
well, and I think the other big elephant in the room, of course, is the FBI, and what the FBI may well determine who the Democratic nominee is.
Yeah, but we talked about that last time, and in my opinion, that doesn't. FBI investigation means nothing, because Obama will A, pardon her, or B, just like not. There's too many people that will not let that happen, and I think Hillary is confident it won't happen.
Yeah, she's very confident that won't happen, and I don't know that everybody in the DNC is that, or whatever. They don't call it DNC. It's DSCC, I think it is. Anyway, they're not as confident. They're worried that it doesn't even have to be an indictment. It simply has to be stretching the thing on with more and more skeletons falling out of the closet, and at some point, people are going to go, wait a minute. This doesn't make any sense.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that a pardon, a sweep under the rug. It'll happen. I think there's just too many. The Clintons are above the law. I mean, they really and truly are above the law, and they can their exposure to the rules and regulations of regular citizens is not the same. And they're confident, and there's enough people in high places and enough connections and enough people with skin in the game, because that's the thing with Hillary's campaign is look at who has, to quote Bobby Jindal's, skin in the game. Well, skin in the game, and it's all Wall Street and banks and media and.
Well, she said she has, thousands of supporters, which is true. But if you look at where the vast majority of her money comes from, it doesn't come from tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people.
No, so I think they're on plan, and she is the Republican establishment nominee. I'm sure there's many people in the Republican establishment would way rather have a Hillary presidency than a Trump presidency, or even a Carson presidency, because Trump is not really a Republican.
No.
He's not a Republican any more than Sanders is really a Democrat. They're just using the parties as tools because it's the only options that there are.
Yeah.
So, but sadly, the other thing for the Republicans is they can't lose with a Hillary candidacy, because if she wins, they get a Republican. If she loses, they get a Republican. And she'll probably lose against a Republican.
Yeah.
She'll probably lose.
I think that's kind of my big takeaway from the debate, basically, is if she goes up against, and I'm just using this as a name because if she goes up against Ted Cruz, he's going to eat her alive. He is. He's not afraid to say what he's thinking, even if you disagree with it. But he is, as we've noted, a skillful debater, and he's going to call her out on a whole bunch of things and say, "Look, okay, so I'm asking you right now: would you break up the banks? No, okay. You won't answer. You didn't answer the question. And that's going to be the problem. Is there's a certain amount of decorum that the moderators have to have, that the opposing candidate, who's not Bernie Sanders.
Right. Well, could you imagine Trump going after Hillary?
If it was Trump.
Could you imagine Trump going after her?
It would be a sideshow. He would pull out every skeleton. The gloves would be, and I'm sure she's not looking forward to that if he's the guy. Excuse me, I think Rubio he's going to be very aggressive if it's Rubio. Ben Carson would be her dream because he would be so nice.
Yeah, but he's not going to get there. I don't think Rubio's going to get there either. I mean, Rubio's sort of Peter principled with his skills, I think, because he really is an empty suit. And, like, Ted Cruz is not an empty suit.
Mm-hmm.
And Trump is not an empty suit. I mean, he spews a lot of empty comments, but he's not a dumb guy, and and he believes in what he believes. He has a core. He has a core to him, and to be successful, you really need to be able to aggressively express what your core is, and like O'Malley seems to have a core. He's just not good at expressing it passionately. And Bernie has a core, and he does express it passionately, just in a unique style. Hillary has no core, but she is great at double and triple speak, and has had a team of professionals, probably a wing, a whole room just filled with people coming up with spin and writing answers, and giving her what she needs to say. And okay, here's how you counter this, and her skill, I guess, is being able to, like, okay, have that file in the head going, all right, this is my answer to this that I've prepared. And it doesn't come from the gut. It comes from a file in your head of how to,
well,
how has my team told me I should answer this?
Yeah. it's very much like people who study for the SATs or ACTs or whatever, and all they know are those questions, and they don't really have an ability to think. They simply have an ability to regurgitate and what they've already memorized.
And that's what Rubio is. Rubio is just like, all right, what did my investors people tell me I should answer it like this? And then he spews out his prepared answer.
Well, it was interesting to me that they called up that quote from Rubio and said, that we're against radical Islam, and Hillary refused to call it. This is the Obama thing again. We're refusing to say, that there's a radical wing of Islam, and the whole farcical thing in France was the fact that has been well documented. They have those no-go zones where the cops don't even go in there, where the Muslims are attacking French citizens all the time.
How did you like Hillary taking credit for Bin Laden?
I was
basically taking credit for it.
She did. I first of all, I bet Obama wanted to whack her as soon as she said that, and I'm sure Leon Panetta would have a few things to say about that. And more importantly, the people who were the boots on the ground, if you will, the special ops people who went in and took him out would say, "This is ridiculous." I mean, these people. It was embarrassing. Although Hillary's supporters probably thought, yeah, she did it, because they're so delusional. They're absolutely.
Well, she probably thinks she did it too. She probably believes. Well, no, she knows she didn't do it, but.
No, she knows she didn't do it, but she'll claim she did it. That's what she does.
But I think when her people were in their room coming up with everything. All right, we can use 9/11. That always gets people emotional, and USA. We got the woman card, and she was just like, that woman card was played in spades, and Bin Laden card. Because really, her Secretary of Stateness, that's the only claim to fame that there is. And that really was just kind of maybe her sitting in a room.
Where does the Secretary of State get any meaningful input on military actions? I mean,
right, but I'm saying in the fog of who am I going to elect, in the fog of her resume, because it's the resume, but it was like, well, what did you do when you were in these positions? What legislation did you introduce? And she always goes back to from when I first brought something to help children when I was a young lawyer. Okay, well, what have you done since then? And before that, she was a Goldwater girl, well, okay, and then what have you done to help children? I mean, but in the fog of who do I elect, and when the mainstream media is your advertising arm, and the Democratic National Committee is doing everything in their power to protect you.
Well, I think, again, the problem is going to, you're absolutely right on that, but the problem is going to become when she has to face off against an opponent who, more than likely, in the Republican side, is not going to be, this is my opinion, I don't think he's going to be a Republican insider. So it's not going to be Jeb exclamation point. And it's going to be one of the outsiders. And, I consider, Rubio is an insider, but Cruz is an outsider in a sense, and so is obviously Trump. I don't think Carson will get it. I think people will see him as a nice kind of person, but not a tremendous leader. And he doesn't. His ideas aren't substantive. They're not really well thought out. When you go and you change from having a 10% across the board tax to 15%. 3 weeks later, it's like, what did you finally decide you had to do some homework? And so, but if she has to go up against Cruz or Trump, I think she's going to get eaten alive.
Well, and the other thing is she won't excite a base. Nobody will be excited about it. They'll be, I guess I have to do this. She'll get that vote, and...
yeah, or maybe I should just stay home and watch Jeopardy.
Yeah,
Yeah, not go out and vote. Just stay
yeah,
home.
and people will vote against her,
Yeah.
and people will jump. I think a lot of people are wusso way, are indifferent either way. If Hillary's running, it would be indifferent. Like, well, maybe I will vote for Trump because at least it's going to blow things up. Because
Well, the
people
advantage.
want something to blow up. A lot of people want something to blow up, whether it's good or bad. Just blow it up, you know.
Well,
And it's
they
like,
want
let's just
something.
do this. Let's just blow things up and see what happens. Because I
They
think
want.
a lot of people thought Obama was going to blow things up. You know, that you were going to get hope and change, and he was going to come in, and things were going to get blown up a little bit. And of course, to Obama's credit, you know, he basically came into a burning house, and here's your pail of fire to keep putting that burning house out. So yeah, he probably came in one of the biggest messes in American history. And I was like hoping, oh my God, maybe this is the next Roosevelt or the next Lincoln here. But sadly, he was out of his depth, I think,
Well,
getting in there. And
yeah.
eventually they got to him, you know, and
It
and I
was
think
interesting that Bernie actually
TTP.
mentioned Theodore Roosevelt in his one of his responses.
Yeah, yeah, and so that having been said, I think people that would see Hillary as an extension of the Obama administration, which she was making even a case for that during the debate, um,
Yeah.
even though she's way more to the right than Obama is, and um, so people, that's another reason people won't get excited for her. Who is going to get excited for her is a question. Is anybody ready for Hillary? I think people are. Well, I guess if this is the choice that's being given to me versus a crazy Republican. So
Well,
can a
I
crazy Republican not seem so crazy, or seem so crazy that, well, you know, maybe I want to try that? I don't know.
yeah, I think this is the big question coming up is because how do the politicians evolve and how do people just see Trump as being more, do Democrats say, hey, I mean, I'm for a lot of those things. I mean, if you really look at it, Trump's spiel, even though his policies are as depicted on his website don't indicate this, but his spiel is, I want to bring jobs back to America, and yeah, we're going to cut off all. That rhetoric works for that group, and of course, it, totally outrages the Republican establishment, but because they want free trade, everything should be free. This is as if there really is free trade, which is ridiculous. Um, so let's see what what happens. But I think the next, uh, first of all, I think Bernie's he's in trouble. He's in real trouble. Um, I think the next Republican debate, you're going to see him just take off on Hillary, and she's, you know, I can tell you right now, Rubio is going to go. She wouldn't call uh, the radicals in Islam out, even after those bombings in Paris. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But
Well, and you know, I don't think Sanders is in trouble. I don't think he's in trouble. I still, even though, like, I mean, where he is in trouble is that Hillary's got like half the super delegates locked up already with all this establishment stuff. But even though I don't feel this debate really is gonna change things that much, it still opened up a door, and it showed that Hillary has no stances anywhere and is really open to get attacked. And like you said, people are starting to see that a little bit and talk about it. And it really showed you that, all right, whether you agree with Sanders on everything or not, he's always on point and consistent. You know, and he'll follow something up with at least something. He won't follow up a question with double speak. He'll say, all right, well, this is what I think, and he'll stick with it. Whereas Clinton's responses are always double and triple speak and don't really, they're all very vague answers that don't answer any questions, but sort of, they're Bill Clinton-esque. And, well, I think this is what she was saying, enough to where you can feel like, well, I guess I agree with what she's saying. but she's not. She doesn't have Bill's delivery is the problem,
No.
and she's not a good messenger, and maybe just maybe people might start thinking, you know what, she can't win, and she can't win an election, and the progressives are not going to, they're not behind her at all, and they're not gonna be down with stumping for her. So,
well, we'll see. I think the first two primaries will be if Bernie can produce some traction there. Maybe he'll be in a better position than I think he is.
well, and another thing too is the Elizabeth Warren card. What if Elizabeth Warren comes out in favor of somebody, and gets on a campaign? She's not going to do it for Hillary, I'm sure.
No, I think she's playing for her political future, and I think she's going to toe the line with the party elite. That's my opinion. I hope I'm wrong. I hope she actually weighs in on something. But will it happen? I don't know. Yeah, it was.
So it's in an anything can happen, right? We're still in an anything can happen, especially on the Republican side. There's no clear path anywhere there, and you're right. If Hillary has to go up against somebody that's going to just tear into her, she is in deep trouble, because Sanders and O'Malley didn't really tear into her that much, and they were pretty and I mean, O'Malley doesn't have it in him. He's just not that guy, and it's sad, because if he was that guy, he'd be doing a lot better. But he's just not that guy.
Well, how about this? How about and I'm not. I don't want to throw this guy out of the election yet. Chris Christie. I mean, what would Chris Christie do to Hillary in a debate?
In the JV, that was sort of like his shtick: is who's going to prosecute? Who's going to prosecute? But you know what? Chris Christie is just a big, ugly, fat guy, and it's going to seem bullying, and he seems like a big schoolyard bully, and with all his attitude, it's not going to play good against Hillary. Cruz would be a better choice.
Well, Cruz is clearly a better choice as far as sophistication of dialogue. But
I mean, there's a reason Christie is so low in the poll numbers, for running for president, because he's just, his shtick. I don't think his shtick. I mean, I agree with you. He would tear into her.
Yeah,
but
that's my point. Is that on the Republican side, the only person who is not going to tear into her, I mean, realistically, who has any sort of chance is Ben Carson. Everybody else up there is going to tear into Hillary, and for good reason. But, well, it's all to play for yet. It's still wide open, but I'm waiting for that breakthrough moment from somebody on either side, who they tell us, here's my plan, this is really going to work, and here's why you have to vote for me. So we shall see if we get that.